By the time Alara was finished, no one in that boardroom was smiling. But they were all smiling now, watching her from across the polished mahogany table as if she were a curious, insignificant bug trapped under a glass. The air in the dining room was thick with the scent of roasted duck and old money. It was a suffocating combination, one she had never gotten used to. Her fiancé, Liam, sat beside her, his hand resting casually on her thigh. It was meant to look like a gesture of affection, but the pressure of his fingers was a warning, a command to be still, to be agreeable. His mother, Catherine, sat at the head of the table, her spine as straight and unyielding as the crystal candlesticks that flanked her. She placed her fork down with a delicate, yet decisive, click against the porcelain plate. The sound seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "Alara, dear," Catherine began, her voice smooth but with an edge of condescension that could strip paint. "Now that the wedding plans are solidifying, there is a small matter of practicality we must address." Liam squeezed her leg. "Play along." Alara's heart began a slow, heavy drumbeat against her ribs. She had been dreading this. She had hoped it would never come. "Of course, Catherine. What is it?" Catherine offered a smile that didn't touch her eyes. It was a baring of teeth, a display of power. She slid a thin, leather-bound folder across the table. It stopped just short of Alara's plate. "Our family's legal counsel has prepared a standard prenuptial agreement. Just a formality, you understand. To protect the family assets." A formality. The word hung in the air, a blatant lie. Alara looked at the folder. Felt like a verdict. She glanced at Liam, searching his face for some sign of solidarity, some hint that this was his mother's doing, not his. She found none. His expression was placid, entitled. He was a prince in his castle, and she was the commoner being granted entry, but only after she acknowledged her station. I see," Alara stammered, her throat suddenly dry. She didn't reach for the folder. Her hands felt bolted to her lap. Liam's uncle, a portly man with a booming laugh, chuckled. "Don't look so grim, girl. It's for your own protection, too." The other family members murmured in agreement, their faces a mixture of pity and amusement. They were all in on it. This was a performance, and she was the unwitting star. Finally, Liam spoke. His voice was low, meant for her ears only, but laced with an unmistakable thread of impatience. "Alara, don't make this a thing. It's just business." "Our marriage is business?" she whispered back, the words catching in her throat. The hurt was a physical thing, a sharp stone in her chest. He sighed, a theatrical display of frustration for his family's benefit. He removed his hand from her leg and leaned back, creating a small but significant distance between them. The gesture was clear. She was on her own. Catherine's patience had worn thin. The polite facade crumbled, revealing the steel beneath. "Let us be frank, Alara. You are coming into this marriage with nothing. No family of note, no assets, a modest career you've already put on hold to support Liam. We are providing you with a life you could only dream of. This agreement simply ensures that you do not confuse gratitude with entitlement." The words struck her with the force of a slap. Nothing. She had given up her promising career in chemical engineering to help him build his company. She had spent countless nights poring over technical data, refining concepts, turning his vague ambitions into tangible science. She had been his partner in every sense of the word, long before he'd put a ring on her finger. But in their eyes, none of that counted. It wasn't on a balance sheet. Tears pricked her eyes, hot and shameful. She fought them back. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Liam, seeing her expression, finally leaned in again. His tone was sharp, a cruel whisper cutting through the haze of her shock. "Be realistic, Alara. What are you bringing to this marriage?" "Nothing. You are nothing without me." That was it. The phrase that would echo in her mind for days, weeks, months to come. "You are nothing without me." It was the distillation of every dismissive comment, every stolen idea, every moment he had made her feel small and dependent. It was the thesis statement of their entire relationship, and she had been too blind, too in love to see it. She looked from his cold eyes to his mother's triumphant smirk, and then around the table at the faces of his family, unanimous in their verdict. They all agreed. She was a non-entity, a decorative object they were graciously allowing into their world, and they were making her sign the user agreement. She finally reached for the folder. Her hand was trembling slightly. She opened it. The legal jargon swam before her eyes, but the intent was clear. In the event of a divorce, she would receive a one-time payment of $50,000. She would waive all rights to any property, any assets, any part of the company he had built. It was an insult wrapped in legalese, a severance package for a long-term employee, not a contract for a life partner. She closed the folder. The silence in the room was expectant. They were waiting for her to acquiesce, to sign away her future with a grateful smile. "I need some time to think about this," she said, her voice barely audible but steady. Catherine scoffed. "There is nothing to think about. You either sign it or the wedding is off. The choice is yours, dear. But I think we all know you'll make the sensible 1 inch." Liam stood up, pulling her chair back for her. It was a dismissal. The conversation was over. "My lawyer will be in touch tomorrow to arrange the signing," he said, his tone final. He then turned to his family, a charming smile returning to his face as if nothing had happened. The laughter and conversation resumed, flowing around Alara as if she were a rock in a stream, an obstacle to be ignored. She stood there for a moment, invisible, humiliated, erased, and in that moment of profound pain and clarity, a single, long-forgotten memory flickered in the back of her mind. A dusty folder, a legal document,
À signature.
patent. A thought, cold and sharp as a shard of ice, began to form. "Nothing? We'll see about that." The drive home was silent. Liam hummed along to the radio, completely unbothered. He believed he had won. He believed she had no choice. The power imbalance was, to him, a fundamental law of nature. He was the sun, and she was a minor planet caught in his orbit, sustained only by his gravity. He had no idea that she was not a planet but a dormant star, and he had just provided the fuel for her to go supernova. When they got back to the sprawling, minimalist house he was so proud of, his house, as he constantly reminded her, he tossed the keys on the counter. "Don't be dramatic about this, Alara. That's how the world works. My mother is just looking out for me." "And you?" she asked, her voice flat. "Who are you looking out for?" He gave her a patronizing look. "For us, of course. A strong foundation for our future." He walked away, heading for the shower, leaving her alone in the vast, empty space of the living room. A strong foundation. The words mocked her. He had no idea what a strong foundation was. But she did. She had built one, and he had put her name on it. She went to bed that night and lay perfectly still, feigning sleep. Liam came in, smelling of expensive soap, and fell asleep instantly, the sleep of a man with no conscience. Alara lay awake, staring into the darkness, the gears in her mind turning with a speed and precision she hadn't felt since her days in the engineering lab. The humiliation from dinner was a fire, burning away the fog of love and denial. For the first time in years, she saw Liam with perfect, horrifying clarity. He wasn't the man she loved. He was a predator who had mistaken her kindness for weakness, her support for subservience. Her mind drifted back, sifting through the years, searching for the moment it all began. She had met him in her final year of college. She was at the top of her chemical engineering program, obsessed with molecular structures and material science. He was a charismatic business student with a grand vision and a shaky understanding of the science required to achieve it. He'd been magnetic, full of energy and ambition. He talked about changing the world with a new battery technology, one that would be smaller, more powerful, and environmentally sustainable. He called his fledgling idea Nova Core. He had the pitch down, the business plan drafted, but the core technology was just a concept, a mess of half-baked theories he'd gleaned from popular science articles. Alara had been captivated. not just by him but by the problem he was trying to solve. She started helping him first as a favor, then as a passion project. She spent her nights in the university library, not studying for her own exams, but researching polymer chemistry and ion transfer for him. She filled whiteboards with equations he didn't understand, explaining complex principles in simple terms he could use in his presentations to potential investors. He soaked it all up, her knowledge becoming his own. He was a brilliant salesman, and with her science backing his charm, he started to gain traction. "We're a team," he would say, kissing her after a successful pitch. "I'm the face, you're the brains. Together, we're unstoppable." She had believed him. She had loved being his secret weapon. The real breakthrough came 6 months after they graduated. They were living in a tiny apartment, surviving on her modest salary as a junior engineer at a local firm and whatever small seed funding Liam could scrape together. He was stuck. The battery prototype had a fatal flaw. It would hold a charge, but it degraded rapidly, becoming useless after only a dozen cycles. His investors were getting nervous. Alara took a week off from her job. She lived and breathed the problem. She ate at her desk, slept for a few hours on the couch, and covered their small apartment in diagrams and chemical formulas. Liam grew frustrated, pacing and complaining about deadlines. He saw the problem as a business obstacle. She saw it as a beautiful, complex puzzle. And then, on the 5th night at 3 in the morning, she solved it. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated genius. She realized they were approaching the cathode material all wrong. By introducing a specific, cross-linked polymer stabilized with a trace amount of graphene, she could create a flexible but resilient molecular scaffold. It would prevent the degradation, allowing for thousands of charge cycles with minimal loss of capacity. It wasn't just a fix. It was a revolutionary leap forward. She woke Liam up, her voice trembling with excitement, and explained it to him. He didn't fully grasp the chemistry, but he understood the result. He saw the dollar signs in his eyes. He hugged her, lifted her up, and spun her around the tiny living room. "You did it. We did it. You're a genius, Alara." The next morning, his tone shifted. "We need to patent this immediately," he said, his voice all business. "This is the whole company." That was when the strange complication arose. Liam, in his haste to get his first business off the ground a few years prior, had defaulted on some loans and had a minor judgment against him. His lawyer, a cut-rate hack he'd found online, advised him that any intellectual property filed in his name could potentially be attached by creditors. "It's a small risk, but we can't risk it," Liam had said, pacing the apartment. "The lawyer said to put it in someone else's name. Someone I trust completely. A temporary measure, just until we clear this old debt." He had stopped and looked at her. His eyes were sincere, full of trust and love. "It has to be you, Alara. The whole thing is built on your idea anyway. We'll file the patent in your name. Once the company is incorporated and the debt is cleared, we'll assign it over. It's just a legal shield." She had hesitated. "I don't know, Liam. That sounds complicated." "It's simple," he insisted. He had already printed out the forms. He showed her a document titled Assignment of Rights. He had signed it, transferring all his interest in the invention to her. "See? This makes it yours legally. Then you file the patent application as the sole inventor. Protects us. It protects the company." So she had done it. She trusted him. She signed the patent application, listing herself as the inventor. She filled out the forms, paid the fees from her own savings account, and mailed the thick envelope to the United States Patent and Trademark Office. She used a P.O. box she had set up for her personal mail, not wanting official documents cluttering their small apartment. The assignment document, the one he had signed giving her all the rights, she placed in a folder with the application receipt. A folder that had ended up in a storage box, buried under old textbooks and forgotten projects. A few months later, Liam secured his first major round of funding. He incorporated Novacor. He paid off his old debts. But they never spoke of the patent again. He got busier, more important. He hired a team of engineers to build on her foundational concept. Alara, at his urging, quit her job to help him manage things, which quickly turned into managing his schedule, his home, his life. He told her the patent was processing and not to worry about it. She was in love and she was busy and she let it slide. The P.O. Box subscription lapsed. Any correspondence from the patent office, including the final notice that the patent had been granted, was returned to sender. Lying in the dark, in the bed they shared in the house her work had paid for, Alara felt a wave of nausea. He hadn't just forgotten to transfer the patent. He had forgotten it was hers at all. In his mind, her contribution had been erased, relegated to a footnote. He had absorbed her genius, claimed it as his own, and then, over the years, convinced himself it was the truth. He had told the story of his breakthrough so many times that he believed his own myth. And she had let him. She had stood silently by as he accepted awards, as he was lauded in magazines as a tech visionary. She had smoothed his tie before he went on stage to give keynote speeches about the very science she had discovered. Her love for him had been a blindfold and a gag. But now the blindfold was off, and she was about to find her voice. The first thing she did was slip out of bed. She moved silently through the dark house, her bare feet cold against the polished concrete floors. She went to the garage. It was filled with his toys, a vintage sports car under a silk cover, a rack of expensive bicycles, a jet ski on a trailer. In the corner, behind stacks of things he'd bought and never used, were her boxes. The ones marked Alara College. They were a time capsule of the person she used to be. She spent the next 2 hours carefully, quietly, opening each box. The smell of old paper and dust filled the air. She found her old textbooks, her lab notebooks filled with her neat, precise handwriting. And then, at the bottom of the third box, she saw it. A faded manila folder. On the tab, in her own writing, Novacore patent. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, perfectly preserved, were the receipt from the patent office, a copy of the application she had filled out, and the assignment of rights document. There it was in black and white. For valuable consideration, the receipt of which is hereby acknowledged, I, Liam Tanner, hereby sell, assign, and transfer to Alara Vance the full and exclusive right, title, and interest in and to the invention. It was followed by a description of her battery technology. And at the bottom, his arrogant, looping signature. She clutched the folder to her chest. It was real. It wasn't a dream. This folder was the foundation. His signature was the key. She took a photo of the assignment document with her phone, then carefully placed the folder back in the box, hiding it exactly as it was. The next morning, she was a different person. The hurt was still there, a deep, aching bruise on her soul, but it was now overlaid with a layer of cold, clear purpose. She made coffee just as she always did. She greeted Liam with a quiet good morning. He was smug, assuming her subdued nature was a sign of her impending surrender. My lawyer, Mr. Harrison, will call you this morning, he said, not looking up from his phone. Just get it done, Alara. Let's move past this. Okay, she said. Her compliance seemed to please him. When Mr. Harrison called, she answered politely. Hello, Mr. Harrison. Yes, I received the document. I will, of course, need my own counsel to review it before I sign anything. There was a surprised pause on the other end of the line. Your own counsel? I can assure you, it is a very standard agreement. I'm sure it is, Alara said, her voice sweet as poison. But I'll feel more comfortable having it reviewed. I'll be in touch. She hung up before he could reply. Her next call was to Maya, her best friend from college, now a brilliant, ruthless corporate litigator in New York. Maya had never liked Liam. She had seen the cracks in his charming facade from day one. Let me guess, Maya said, her voice sharp and alert, dispensing with pleasantries. The trust fund baby finally showed his true colors. Alara let out a shaky breath. Worse than you can imagine, Maya, she recounted the dinner. The prenup, the devastating words he had thrown at her. That absolute bastard. Maya hissed. I'm booking a flight. Don't you dare sign anything. Don't even speak to them. Where are you? I'm still at the house, Alara said. But Maya, there's more. I think I have leverage. Real leverage, she told her about the patent. About the folder in the garage. There was a long silence on Maya's end. When she finally spoke, her voice was filled with a kind of reverent awe. Alara, are you telling me that you are the legal owner of the core intellectual property of his entire 9-figure company? I think so, Alara said, the reality of it just beginning to sink in. Maya let out a low whistle. Oh, this is not a divorce. This is a hostile takeover. Alara, you are not nothing. You are a queen holding the deed to the entire kingdom, and the idiot king doesn't even know it. Maya arrived the next day, a whirlwind of energy and righteous fury. She set up a war room in the guest bedroom Alara was now sleeping in. The first thing they did was hire a top-tier patent attorney. They met him in a discreet office downtown. Alara, clutching the precious folder, explained the story. The attorney, a man named Mr. Klein, listened intently, his face unreadable. He examined the documents, his eyes scanning the assignment, the application, the receipt. He then turned to his computer and began typing. For 10 minutes, the only sound was the clicking of his keyboard. Finally, he turned back to them. A slow smile spread across his face. Ms. Vance, he said, congratulations. U.S. patent number 9,876,543 was granted to you. As the sole inventor, 18 months ago. It is fully active and in good standing. Based on this assignment document, which is ironclad, you are the 100% undisputed legal owner of the technology. Novacore has been operating on your intellectual property, apparently without a license. Alara felt the floor shift beneath her. It was true. It was all true. Mr. Klein continued. In layman's terms, you own the engine to their car. Right now, they are just borrowing it. And you are within your rights to take the keys back at any time. You could, in fact, file an injunction that would force them to cease all operations immediately. Maya grinned, a shark's grin. And what would that do to the company's valuation? It would reduce it to zero, Mr. Klein said simply. A tech company with no rights to its own tech is just an office building full of furniture. The next step was to hire a private investigator. A discreet professional Maya knew. His job was to dig into Liam and Novacore. If he's this brazen with you, Maya reasoned, he's cutting corners elsewhere. The investigator was worth every penny. Within a week, he came back with a treasure trove of filth. Liam was not just cheating on her. He was having a serious affair with the daughter of a major board member, a man named Walter Jennings. The affair was an open secret among the executive team. They were planning to get married as soon as Alara was out of the picture. But that was just the salacious part. The financial discoveries were the real bombshell. Novacore was in the final stages of a massive acquisition deal with a larger tech conglomerate, a company called OmniGen. The deal was valued at over $500 million. It was the reason for the sudden urgency with the prenup. Liam needed to present himself as unencumbered. The investigator also uncovered evidence of serious financial fraud. To make Novacore look more attractive for the acquisition, Liam and his CFO had been systematically hiding debt and inflating revenue figures. They were cooking the books, creating a house of cards that was about to be sold for a fortune. They were committing federal crimes. Alara sat in the hotel room where she and Maya were now staying, staring at the documents the PI had provided. Bank statements, falsified invoices, emails between Liam and the CFO, photos of Liam with his new girlfriend, looking intimate and smug. The pain of the betrayal was immense. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a conspiracy. He hadn't just fallen out of love with her. He had been actively plotting her removal while using her, living in a house built on her intellectual labor, and planning a future with someone else. The grief she had felt was burning away, replaced by something harder, colder. It was the righteous anger of an engineer who sees a flawed design, a corrupt system that is about to collapse. And she was the one who was going to pull the final pin. So, what's the plan? Alara asked, her voice quiet but firm. Do we send a letter? File the injunction? Maya shook her head.
No.
A letter gives them time to prepare, to hide assets, to spin a story. An injunction starts a legal battle that could take years. We are not going to do this in a courtroom. We are going to do this in a boardroom. Maya's eyes gleamed with strategic brilliance. They believe you are weak. They believe you are ignorant. We are going to let them keep believing that right up until the last possible second. We are going to let Liam walk himself right into the trap. The plan was audacious. It was terrifying. And it was perfect. Alara had to return to the house. It was the hardest thing she had ever had to do. She had to pretend to be the defeated, heartbroken woman Liam expected her to be. She packed her things slowly, methodically, while he watched her with a mixture of pity and impatience. "Have you spoken to your lawyer?" he asked one afternoon, finding her in the bedroom, folding clothes into a box. "Yes," she said, her voice soft. "He's reviewing the papers." "Good," Liam said, satisfied. "The sooner we get this handled, the better. For both of us." He was so confident, so utterly sure of his power over her. He saw her packing and he saw his victory. He didn't see the gears of his own destruction grinding into place. The days that followed were a masterclass in emotional restraint. Alara moved through the house like a ghost, her face a mask of quiet sadness. Inside, she was a coiled spring of fury and focus. She listened to Liam's phone calls, his confident talk of the Omnigen deal, and the final board approval. He was walking toward the cliff's edge, and he was whistling a happy tune. The final provocation, the last act of petty cruelty that vaporized any lingering shred of doubt in her heart, came 2 days before the board meeting. Alara was packing the last of her personal items when Liam came into the room. He was holding the leash for Buster, the golden retriever they had adopted as a puppy, the dog she had trained, fed, and cared for every single day. "Just so we're clear," Liam said, his tone casual, "Buster stays here with me." Alara froze. "What? No. He's my dog, Liam." Liam laughed, a short, ugly sound. "He lives in my house, Alara. He's registered to this address. He's my dog." He knelt and ruffled Buster's fur, the dog wagging his tail, oblivious. "Don't worry, boy. I'll take good care of you." It was so gratuitous, so unnecessary. It was a final twist of the knife, a demonstration of his absolute control. He wasn't just taking the house, the life, the future. He was taking the one creature in that house who gave her unconditional love. He then tossed her car keys onto the box she was packing. "I'll have your car towed to your parents' place tomorrow. I need the garage space." He was taking her mobility, stranding her, treating her like an inconvenience to be disposed of. He looked at her, his expression cold and final. "Just sign the papers, Alara. It's the only smart move you have left to make. My lawyer has scheduled the signing for Friday morning, at the office. We'll get it notarized, and then you can be on your way." That was the moment. The last ounce of her old self, the part that still remembered the man she thought she loved, died. In her mind, she saw the chessboard. He thought he was putting her in checkmate. He had no idea she was about to flip the entire board over. "Fine," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion. "Friday morning." He smiled, a smug, satisfied smile. He had won. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving her with her boxes and her broken heart. A heart that was now being rapidly reforged into a weapon. Friday morning arrived, crisp and clear. The day of the reckoning. Alara dressed carefully. She chose a simple, elegant dark blue dress. It was professional, understated, and powerful. It was the armor for the battle to come. She put on minimal makeup, her face calm and composed. The trembling woman from the family dinner was gone. In her place was a CEO waiting to claim her company. Maya met her in the lobby of a hotel near the Novacor headquarters. With them was Mr. Klein, the patent attorney, his briefcase full of legal ammunition. "Ready?" Maya asked, giving her hand a squeeze. Alara took a deep breath. "I'm ready." They walked to the Novacor Tower, a gleaming monument to Liam's success. A building made of glass and steel and, unknown to anyone but them, Alara's intellectual property. They were expected. The receptionist directed them to the executive floor. Liam's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, was waiting for them in a small, sterile conference room. The prenup was laid out on the table. Liam was not there. He was, according to the lawyer, preparing for the board meeting scheduled to begin in 30 minutes. The meeting where the Omnigen acquisition would get its final approval. Ms. Vance, Mr. Harrison said, gesturing to the chair. If you'll just sign here and here. Alara did not sit down. She looked at the lawyer, then at Maya. I won't be signing this today, Mr. Harrison. The lawyer's professional smile faltered. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Mr. Tanner was quite clear that you had agreed. Plans have changed, Maya said, stepping forward. Ms. Vance has a counterproposal, but she intends to make it to the board directly. Harrison was flustered. That's impossible. The board is in a closed session. You can't just walk in there. Watch us, Alara said, her voice ringing with newfound authority. She turned and walked out of the small conference room, heading directly for the main boardroom at the end of the hall. Maya and Mr. Klein fell into step beside her. They could hear voices from inside the boardroom. Liam was in the middle of his grand presentation, his voice full of passion and confidence. Alara pushed the large glass door open and walked in. The room fell silent. 12 pairs of eyes turned to her. The board of directors, a collection of wealthy, powerful men, stared in confusion. At the head of the table, Liam's face went from shock to pure fury in a matter of seconds. Alara, what the hell are you doing here? He hissed, striding towards her. This is a private meeting. Get out. Catherine, his mother, who sat on the board as a major investor, looked aghast. Alara, you are making a scene. Leave at once. Alara stood her ground. Her heart was pounding, but her voice was steady. I'm afraid I can't do that, Liam. I'm here on business. My business. You have no business here, he spat, grabbing her arm. I would advise you to unhand my client, Mr. Klein said, stepping forward and placing his briefcase on the table with a solid thud. The sound commanded attention. The chairman of the board, a silver-haired man named Arthur Kensington, looked from Liam to the unfamiliar lawyer. Who are you? What is the meaning of this intrusion? Mr. Klein opened his briefcase. My name is David Klein. I am a patent attorney representing Ms. Alara Vance. He pulled out a sheaf of papers, bound and certified. I am here to inform the board that Novacor has a significant, previously undisclosed liability. In fact, the entire foundation of this company is predicated on intellectual property that it does not own. A murmur went through the room. Liam's face had gone pale. He looked at Alara, a dawning horror in his eyes. He was starting to remember. This is absurd, Catherine said, her voice sharp. Liam invented the Novacor technology. It is his. With all due respect, madam, that is factually incorrect, Mr. Klein said calmly. He slid a document across the table to the chairman. It was a certified copy of the patent. This is U.S. patent number 9,876,543, granted 18 months ago. It is the foundational patent for the battery technology this company markets. As you can see, the sole inventor and legal owner listed is Ms. Alara Vance. A heavy, profound silence fell over the room. It was thicker than any sound, heavier than any argument. The chairman, Mr. Kensington, picked up the document. He read it, his eyes widening. He looked at the other board members, then at Alara, who stood there, calm and resolute. He looked at Liam, whose arrogant facade had completely crumbled, replaced by a mask of pure panic. Liam finally found his voice, sputtering. This is a misunderstanding, a clerical error. She has nothing. She brought nothing to this. Alara met his desperate gaze. The moment she had replayed in her mind 1,000 times had arrived. She took a slow, deliberate breath. You're right, Liam, she said, her voice clear and cutting, ringing through the silent boardroom. I didn't bring anything to this company, she paused, letting the words hang in the air. I am the company. The effect was devastating. The board members stared at her, then back at the patent, the truth clicking into place with horrifying financial implications. The $500 million acquisition that was moments from being approved was now built on a lie. Walter Jennings, the board member whose daughter Liam was secretly dating, looked like he was going to be sick. Is this true, Liam? She manipulated me, Liam shouted, his voice cracking. She tricked me years ago. She's a snake. Alara didn't even flinch. She turned to her friend. Maya, I believe you have some other items for the board's consideration. Maya stepped forward, cool and professional. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, she began, her voice carrying the authority of a seasoned litigator. Not only has Mr. Tanner built this company on intellectual property he does not own, but he has also been actively engaged in defrauding your impending acquisition partner, OmniGen. She distributed a second set of folders. In here, you will find evidence of systematic accounting fraud, orchestrated by Mr. Tanner and his CFO, designed to artificially inflate revenue and conceal significant debt. We have emails, falsified invoices, and a sworn statement from a whistleblower within your accounting department. The room descended into chaos. Board members were shouting. Mr. Kensington was trying to restore order, his face ashen. The dream of a massive payday had evaporated, replaced by the nightmare of SEC investigations and shareholder lawsuits. Maya wasn't finished. She looked directly at Walter Jennings. Furthermore, Mr. Tanner's personal judgment seems to be as compromised as his professional ethics. I have here photographic evidence of his affair with your daughter, Mr. Jennings, and documentation of company funds being used for their personal travel. That was the final blow. Jennings turned a shade of purple Alara had never seen on a human being. He stood up, pointed a trembling finger at Liam, and screamed, "You are finished, Tanner. You are finished." Liam looked around the room, at the faces of the men who had admired him, who had invested in him. He saw nothing but contempt and fury. He turned to his mother, his last resort. "Mother, do something." Catherine looked at her son, her face a ruin of shock and despair. The company she had poured millions into was worthless. Her family name was about to be dragged through the mud. She looked at him not as a mother, but as a ruined investor. She said nothing. Finally, Liam's eyes landed on Alara, the woman he had called nothing, the woman who had just dismantled his entire world with a quiet voice and a folder full of facts. The hatred in his eyes was terrifying. He lunged at her, a primal scream of rage tearing from his throat. "You bitch! You ruined me!" He never reached her. Two of the larger board members and a security guard who had been summoned into the room intercepted him, tackling him to the ground. He was a mess, sobbing and screaming, a fallen king throwing a tantrum on the floor of his conquered castle. The chairman, Mr. Kensington, looked at Alara. The anger was gone, replaced by a grim, pragmatic desperation. "Ms. Vance," he said, his voice shaky, "what do you want?" The immediate aftermath was swift and brutal. Liam was fired, his termination effective immediately. He was escorted from the building by security, a blubbering, defeated man. As he was led past the boardroom, his eyes met Alara's for a fleeting second. She saw no remorse, only pure, unadulterated hatred. She gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was not a gesture of triumph, but of finality. A quiet acknowledgement of the chapter that was now definitively closed. Then she turned and walked back into the boardroom, where her new life was just beginning. The OmniGen acquisition was, of course, dead on arrival. The news of the fraud and the IP dispute sent Novacore's stock into a freefall. The company was on the brink of total collapse. They were facing an SEC investigation, shareholder lawsuits, and an injunction from Alara that would shutter their operations. They had one and only one path to survival. The board, led by a humbled Arthur Kensington, had no choice but to negotiate. Alara, with Maya and Mr. Klein by her side, laid out her terms. They were not negotiable. She did not want a payout. She did not want to sell her patent. She wanted control. She demanded Liam's immediate and permanent removal, along with his CFO and any other executives complicit in the fraud. She demanded the resignation of Catherine Tanner and Walter Jennings from the board. And she demanded to be installed as interim CEO, with a clear path to the permanent position, to oversee the cleanup and restructuring of the company she had, in essence, created. The board had no leverage. It was either accept her terms or face complete annihilation. They chose survival. By the end of the day, Alara Vance, the woman who had been told she was nothing, was the chief executive officer of Novacor. Her first act as CEO was to walk into Liam's ostentatious office, the one with the panoramic view of the city. She picked up the phone on his desk and called building security. "Hello, this is Alara Vance," she said calmly. "Please have Mr. Tanner's personal vehicle removed from the executive parking garage immediately. He will no longer be needing the space. Oh, and one more thing. There is a golden retriever in his home. His name is Buster. Please have an animal transport service retrieve him and deliver him to my hotel. He is my dog." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The news of the boardroom coup went public, and the business world was captivated by the story of the underestimated fiancé who had taken everything. The SEC launched a full-scale investigation. Liam, his CFO, and several other executives were indicted on charges of wire fraud and securities fraud. Catherine Tanner was financially ruined. Her entire fortune had been tied up in Novacor stock, which was now worth less than the paper it was printed on. She was forced to sell the family estate, the very place where Alara had been so brutally humiliated. The last Alara heard, she was living in a small, rented condominium, a bitter and forgotten woman. Alara, meanwhile, was working tirelessly. She was in her element. She brought in a new ethical management team. She was transparent with her employees, explaining the situation and her vision for the future. She dove back into the science, the part of the business she loved, and began innovating again, pushing the boundaries of her own technology. She found that the people who worked at Novacor were, for the most part, good people who had been let down by corrupt leadership. They rallied behind her, inspired by her story and her genuine passion. One evening, while working late in her new office, she found a small, framed quote on the bookshelf, left behind by the previous, long-gone CEO. It was from an old engineering textbook. "The structure is everything. If the foundation is yours, the building is yours," she smiled. She had known it all along. 1 year later, the world looked very different. Alara stood on a stage, accepting an award for Technology CEO of the Year. Novacor, under her leadership, had not only survived but thrived. She had settled the inevitable shareholder lawsuits, cooperated fully with the SEC, and rebuilt the company from the ground up, this time on a foundation of integrity. The company's new slogan, which she had written herself, was "Powering the Future." Responsibly, revenue was up, employee morale was at an all-time high, and Novacor was once again at the forefront of battery technology. But this time, for all the right reasons. She had also used her newfound position to create a foundation, the Vance Initiative for Women in STEM, which provided scholarships and mentorship to young women pursuing careers in science and engineering. She wanted to ensure that no other brilliant woman would have her contributions erased or belittled. As for the antagonists of her story, their downfall was as complete as her rise was meteoric. Liam Tanner was found guilty on multiple counts of fraud. The judge, citing his arrogance and lack of remorse, sentenced him to 15 years in federal prison. His name was now a cautionary tale in business schools. His mother, Catherine, lived in obscurity, her social circle having abandoned her as quickly as her fortune had vanished. After her speech, Alara bypassed the fancy after-party. She preferred a quieter celebration. She went to a large, beautiful park on the edge of the city. Waiting for her, wagging his tail with unrestrained joy, was Buster. She threw a ball for him, watching him bound happily across the green grass. She felt a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. The anger was gone. The pain had faded to a dull scar. All that was left was a quiet strength. "He's a beautiful dog," a voice said beside her. She turned. A man with kind eyes and a warm smile was standing there. He was holding a sketchbook. "Sorry to interrupt. I was just sketching that old bridge, and I couldn't help but notice how happy your dog is." "He's had a good year," Elara said with a smile. They struck up a conversation. His name was Alex, and he was an architect. He talked about his passion for sustainable design, for creating spaces that felt human and connected to nature. He asked her what she did, and she simply said, "I work in technology." She liked that he didn't press for more. He was interested in her thoughts on art and parks and dogs, not in a title or a company. For the first time in a very long time, she felt seen for who she was, not for what she could provide. They talked until the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. When he asked for her number, she gave it to him without hesitation. A few months later, Elara was at home in the beautiful but not ostentatious house she had bought for herself. It was filled with light, comfortable furniture, and the happy snores of Buster sleeping at her feet. On the wall in her study, next to her engineering degree, was a simple, elegant frame. Inside it was U.S. patent number 9,876,543. She looked at it, a tangible symbol of her journey. It was a reminder not of the betrayal, but of her own strength. A reminder of the knowledge she held, the value she created. Liam had been wrong. His mother had been wrong. The world had been wrong. She was not nothing. She had learned that you don't have to be loud to be strong. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who holds the foundation. And you must never, ever let anyone convince you that what you know, what you create, what you are, is nothing. It is and always was everything. She was living the life she truly deserved, a life she had not been given, but had built herself from the ground up.